extremely devoted and has great perseverance and great passion will end up being a better student. I actually, both as a teacher and a psychologist, disagree with that. And if that's what the school wants, and you've got a broad kid, it's not the right school for your kid. So this issue of why doesn't Stanford open itself up to more different kinds of kids? It doesn't need to, it doesn't want to, it's not going to happen. But there are plenty of other schools around to look at. And in real life, you know, it is the broadly developed person who tends to have more options and more opportunities. So, you know, that's just a discussion. So it's a reality discussion. It's good to have. Yeah.
Older teenagers, aiming for college, maybe not emotionally ready, maybe young for their age group, whatever. Any recommendations? How do you start to evaluate that? Good things to do with college not going to happen.
So the question is, what about kids who aren't ready for college? And it's a great question because it brings up the whole issue of a gap year. Is that a good thing to do? Trade schools, work. You know, for parents to hear, think about putting your kid to work for a year, maybe. That's sort of anathema in most of these communities, or community college, which is a really good opportunity for some kids who aren't ready. There are kids who are simply not ready to leave home yet. And that's not the majority of kids, but it's some kids. And I like a gap year a great deal if it's structured. I don't like the idea of a gap year where a kid stays home and eats Cheetos and smokes a bomb. That's not a good idea. But a structured gap year, you know, it's great. I mean, we worry about that at 5, right? Is the child ready for kindergarten or not? But there's very little discussion about it at 18, where the stakes really are high if you send a kid away who doesn't have the skills. So there are opportunities, but I think you want to look at the arena in which the child's not ready and make sure that year serves the purpose of accelerating that area of deficit, you know. Anybody else? Yeah?
If you have an average kid, is there a tool that can be used to help them identify some strengths?
If you have an average kid, a tool to, well, I mean, there's psych testing that will tell you where their relative area of strength is. How old is the child? Well, you can get psych testing that'll tell you, you know, this is, I'm stammering because I know the testing really well and I think it sucks. So I'm really hesitant. Like my kid who was a lawyer was supposed to be a dental hygienist or something. You know, yeah, I really rather would. And part of that is you being open to new experiences yourself. So one of the things that I did with Jeremy, who looked so incredibly average, but he was interested in hands-on thing, and I'm like so totally not hands-on, you can tell with the... so I went and I learned sign language with him, and then I took a blacksmithing course. Who knew that there still were even blacksmiths around? But it was great for him. It was great for him to see himself doing well in something that I didn't do well in, right? That's back to my very first point of we look so, you know, like such big shots to our kid, but if you can find something that your kid is good at and they can teach you, that's a real ego boost. I mean, and so, yeah. And there is testing, I don't love it. Yeah. Yes?
I really appreciate the work that you do at Success.
Thank you.
Question, I've talked to Dean Julie quite a bit about what she sees in the freshman kids that were coming in before she left, and so impressive, these incredible resumes, and then they get there and they can't get their laundry in.
Right.
For stress comes in and they fall apart.
Right.
Certainly emotionally. And I increasingly hear about workplaces really looking for young employees that have grit and resilience and perseverance and all these great traits that we talk
So the question is, am I seeing a shift in the universities looking at a broader picture of a child's potential and achievement? Some. So for example, MIT and Tufts, both of those schools now take a percentage of their incoming class, not based on metrics at all, based on whatever the kid wants to hand in, movies, and so there are schools that are paying attention to a broader thing than just metrics. I mean, metrics, I really ought to find out, I don't know exactly what metrics predicts. So, you know, a kid who's a straight A student is probably good at that analytic kind of thinking, probably has a lot of perseverance, but I'm not positive because what I hear from kids is, straight A student kids, is they stayed up all night on Adderall. I learned it for the test. I have no idea what I studied. And this is not an unusual scenario, this sort of mile-long, inch-deep kind of learning, where kids are not being prepared to be lifetime learners. So I think that there are schools that are recognizing that you can't, the whole story is not in metrics. Stanford has returned to doing an interview, which is a step in the right direction. But I wouldn't, you know, in all honesty, I wouldn't hold my breath waiting for the university system, which is almost corporatized at this point, to really change. You want to look for the school that works with your kids, and there are so many undiscovered gems of schools out there to look at. Okay, yeah.
There's a professor from Middlebury, I don't remember her name, but she measured she traced kids through college and into the workforce, and the number of texts and emails and phone calls they had with their parents
Right.
this week, and then their success in
Right.
the workplace or lack of success, and found that the more contact kids had with college translated to poor performance in the workforce.
Right.
Have you looked at that data?
Yeah.
You seem to be consistent.
Yeah, but you know, kids who have tremendous, and actually, there's another interesting finding, which is those kids, in terms of adjustment, did better than we thought they would do. We were looking to see those kids who were constantly clenched to their parents do poorly emotionally. They didn't do so poorly emotionally. They did not do well once they got out into the workforce. They didn't do so badly in college, which was an interesting finding. And that's because I think college is just now like sort of what we used to call adolescence, where you would expect that kind of closeness. You're not, you know, your kid is not going to do well if they don't have the opportunity to go out and try their wings and not always be dependent on a parent. And unfortunately, some businesses now have parent waiting rooms so that when the child is interviewed, the parent has a place to wait for a job. I would say probably a third of my speaking now is at businesses. I know nothing about business. I'm going next week to speak to American Express C-level people. Why? Because they feel they can't get decent workers anymore. You know, the story always is, the knock on my door, it's 5 o'clock, it's time to go, right? It's not time to go. You didn't finish your work. How did I do? I don't have the time to spend every day telling you how you did. And so a lot of, you know, Morgan Stanley, a lot of these places are bringing people like me in to say, what do we do? We can't, and my answer is you've got to look at a broader pool of kids. You think you've been triaging well by only looking at the Ivy Leagues. It's not the best way to triage anymore. So, yes, and that was the finding, yeah.
Your thoughts on sustainability for parents who are trying to let their kids self-regulate?
Sustainability
for parents. How can we sustain ourselves as we try to let our kids stumble and regulate themselves to, you know, a different setting and in a big transition?
How do we not let it bother us?
Yeah.
Well, how do we not let it bother us? I guess because you would see it as an integral part of a job well done. So if you feel that your kid's stumbling somehow reflects badly on you or reflects badly on your kid, then you're going to feel bad. If you see that as I'm really doing my job because my kid got a C and came to me and said, I got a C, and I said, well, I think you should talk to your teacher, or what do you think you should do? And the kid maybe gets teary and says, well, I think you should call, and you go, you're 14. I think you should talk to your teacher. If you see that as a job well done, then I think that's how you sustain yourself. I mean, nobody likes to see their kid fail. It's not like I'm saying, make sure your kid fails every day because it's really good. We don't like it, but it is really in their best interest. It's the same as like when our kid gets vaccinated. I never liked taking them, but I had polio as a child. And so I understood on a very visceral level that this was really good for my kids, even though it made them cry for a moment. It's that way. There was somebody else who, yeah.
So what you're saying, I can see, I grew up in Europe, I went to school in Europe, and there's a huge difference between Europe and here.
Sure.
And we get pieces of rock, basically, to go down to our home and to talk to the teacher or whatever else. And I see here that the parenting in general, and I had a lot of that, are helicopter or tiger or whatever you want to call it. And in Europe, no, that would never happen.
Right.
It would never happen. So how can you explain to the difference in style in by the way, in the study that says that for high tech, if you look, there are a lot of majority of hires are from non-US, not necessarily Europe,
India, China, Israel. Interesting book, The Startup Nation. It's kind of an ode to Israel, but the ability to take risk and to try things is, sort of integral.
How do you go from there to here? I mean, we are a community, US and in.
Right.
But, the rock is not really what we teach our kids. We don't teach, I talk about that.
Right. I think we've become incredibly competitive as mothers, as schools, as institutions, and part of that has to do with diffusion. That we don't live. Europe is a bunch of small countries. Here, your parents are on the other side, your best friends up here. You don't have the kind of community to fall back on, and so the nuclear family and the child becomes the focus of a tremendous amount of resources and energy and stuff like that. And I think that we feel more lately that there's a scarcity of good stuff out there, and that if we don't grab the ring for our children, they're never going to get it. Somebody would say, well, so look at Europe. They're not doing so well. They're having all kinds of problems. And we have better research, we have better, tech, we have a whole bunch of better things. This is a better system. The point is there are good things in all of these systems, I think the point is to utilize what works. Everybody's always talking about Finland as the exemplar in education. There are great things to be learned from Finland. There's the book Bringing Up Bebe, which is cute, about France. There are things to take from all these systems, but we're kind of locked into an outdated system at this point. And I think I spoke at Aspen this year. Everybody's running around with tablets. Everybody has a tablet. And I'm on these panels with Joel Klein and people who are just like, here's the future of education, right here. We're going to every teacher's going to have a tablet, and they're going to know every wrong answer. They can zoom right in on the kid who didn't get it right. And it's like, really? You don't have a single teacher, administrator on any one of these panels. Whatever makes you think that this is the answer to education? I mean, it's a partial answer to certain things, but there's this kind of irrational exuberance that happens, I think, in this country. We get really worked up about stuff, and usually our expectations really need to be tempered. So there are things we absolutely can learn from Europe and from not devoting a disproportionate amount of resources to our kids. I think I'm supposed to stop. I'm getting that. I can see out of the corner of my eye. It's like, so I'm going to stop. I'll be outside signing books. Thank you so much.